I remember when we fell in love. There was no me without you. Gave you my heart till death do us part. We made our vows to.
So good to have you all here. Noelle Dodge. She has a master's in human services and administration, where she creates trauma-informed programs that are self-paced. She also served as a psychosocial rehabilitation group addiction counselor for 2 years. She is now in prevention and early intervention as a parent educator to help high-risk families from pregnancy to age 3. She will discuss the impact of unresolved childhood traumas in adult living. And her website is www.noelledodge.com. Jonathan Mcallister, born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, he grew up in church and developed as an extraordinary trumpeter and was first chair in his high school band. He brings years of relationship experience to the table and is willing to learn as well as share information which will hopefully empower others to experience success in their relationships. He is here to share from personal experience the religious legalism devastating effect on relationships. Suzanne Cross is a singer, songwriter, and has been singing with a variety of top-notch bands and organizations in the Chicagoland area for many years. She is a music therapist by day. She sings many styles with ease, including standards, blues, soul, classical, and her favorite styles.
Add Etta James to the mix now.
Hey!
I'm just saying, I'm killing out some Etta, I gotta say. Go ahead.
No, you kill anything. And rock.
Rock and roll. Yep.
Rock it out, baby. She will share what she has discovered about women's bodies, women's wisdom. Ezra Morris, singer and songwriter from New York, graduated with a Bachelor of Arts in Music from Columbia College, Chicago. He blends words and sounds to tell stories about the human experience. He will be sharing his views on sexuality and spirituality and developing boundaries. Mr. Will Howard, versatility, passion, and creativity are words that describe bassist, composer, producer Will Howard. Chicago-based, but nationally and internationally seasoned bassist, Will's unique combination of gospel roots, formal study, and wide-ranging musical interests have allowed him to work with a wide variety of artists. He will share with us steps he took to personal growth and self-development. And his website is www.willgroove2.com.
My minor is also philosophy. I don't think I ever mentioned it. I'm a jazz and commercial music major at Roosevelt University, but my minor was philosophy.
Fantastic. Okay, so the conversation's gonna get real rich.
A professional philosopher.
Come on, look. I think it all ties together. And Anita Levels, a lover of communication and thought, a vocal artist, voice influencer, songwriter, and producer who began singing at the age of 3 years old. Her powerhouse, soulful, but lark-like vocals have graced national and international audiences. Anita has a master's degree in training and development from Carlow University, which is in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and believes that instrumentations and the voice have the innate ability to vibrate truth, healing, and thought. She will share insights on allowing spiritual connection to heal the emotional wounds. Her website is www.anitabrownlevels.com. So I'm going to give everybody some time, 3 to 5 minutes, to share those specific topics and what closure, what does that mean to you personally? So we'll start with Noelle.
Okay, so for me, closure is when I come to the realization that I'm ready to forgive and let someone go that has hurt me, typically without apology, and that it's just the relationship is just reflecting more of resentment and hatred than love and compassion. And I believe in protecting your energy, and I can love someone and keep them at a distance. And sometimes closure means I just have a lot of personal boundaries that don't match with the norm. So for me, there's no one on Facebook that I've ever been intimate who's a friend on my page. Once that is, if you've reached that level with me and we're no longer at that level, you don't need access to my personal life. That's just me. I don't recommend that for others. That's just what works for me. If whether it's a parent, an adult child, sometimes we have to let people go because that is truly loving them. That is truly honoring them. And having the closure is to say, no longer going to carry this with me. And if you're ever, wanting to come back to have a healthy relationship, we'd have to talk about reopening that door. It doesn't automatically mean people get access to come back into my life, because I've personally spent decades giving people front row seats who want to throw sticks on my stage to see if I trip. And that's my front row is reserved for the people who are just happy to be there. Just if they're just happy to be there, I'm good with that. So that's for me, closure is just a final, and I think the act of closure is a final opportunity for someone to apologize or to say, how can I repair this? Because some people are so caught up in their ego, they would rather just say goodbye. So goodbye. But I'm offering you the opportunity also to say, can we repair this? And if someone's ego is too big to repair what's been damaged, then goodbye is probably the best solution.
Yes.
That's just for me.
Tell us about the, what in your studies and your work that you've done, the impact of unresolved childhood traumas and adult living.
Yeah, it just keeps creeping up, whether it's, in my own personal relationships, myself, my ex-spouse, or my client sitting in front of me. We're all human. We're all in this boat together, and no degree or job title makes it different. It's just we have access to more information and tools to heal ourselves. So, but unresolved childhood trauma shows up in our relationships repeatedly and repeatedly. For example, say a mother with an OCD issue where everything has to be perfect. A child may grow up in that household feeling that their love is conditional, that the parent only loves them if everything's in place and everything's in order. Children develop healthy relationships based on healthy attachments. And if it's a conditional attachment, that is something that will spill over into relationships. And it's perceived as abuse because it's actually emotional abandonment. So it's just things like that. So it comes up in all these different places where, a man may be like, oh, when he gets a free cup of coffee at Dunkin' Donuts, now he wants her phone number and her schedule. And because he's got this, wants to attach to people who are kind to them. And it's not really about a sexual thing. It's more of oh, you see me, you value me, I want to attach to you. So it can become this smothering instead of loving. And it's not allowing the relationship to flow in and out because it's this fear and panic and trauma from childhood.
Sure. It's so funny that you even mentioned because, OCD and mothers and spilt milk. It is so incredible that you mentioned that because when I got married, I didn't even know my identity. And my childhood was pretty traumatizing, just abusive. And when I became a mom, I had determined that I was going to love my children and I was going to do everything perfect, not realizing that those things were going to creep in with me. Oh, yeah. And I remember my impatience when my daughter would spill milk. And it was like the end of the world. And it was like an out of body thing. Like if you knew me back then, you knew I didn't hardly say anything. I was very quiet, very kind. I wouldn't hurt an ant, you know what I mean? And
Right.
for me, my daughter, my baby, I love her. I want to nurture her. And over spilt milk, that it will become an issue. You know, just those OC, the need to be in control.
Yes.
You know? Yeah. So
Well,
it's,
and
wow.
as a parent, like now that I'm working with moms, and a lot of them, like I just got a new client today, 2 parents that are 15 years old. She just turned 15 and he's 15. And they're about to be parents. It's just amazing where they're still being children and they're
Right.
having children. Those things that creep up, you know, I'll never do what my mother did. And then you find yourself doing exactly what your mother did. Extreme, that it's now become just as healthy on the other side, where it's like, oh, my mother was OCD. I'm not going to clean anything at all and become a hoarder, you know, and go to the other. I just throw that out there. I don't know. But it's like, you know, sometimes we can go from one extreme to another. So I love those commercials. So the insurance company where the son's acting like the mother, or the daughter's acting like the father, they like morph into their parents. That's really truly what happens.
Oh yeah.
In relationships. I mean, when I was married, I had to wait until he was no longer home before I could put the dishes away or do the dishes. Because the sound of clinging dishes triggered him, because his mother would slam cabinets and get mad and be angry because she's got to do the dishes. And so just putting a cup in the cupboard, you know, he'd huff and puff and stomp his feet. And I was like, what's going on? I'm seeing a pattern here. Every time I do the dishes, you get angry. And he had to stop and think about it. And he's like, you know, my bedroom was right off the kitchen. That's all this. She just constantly slamming. I'm like, okay. So then it was just, I just kind of like reserved doing the dishes, you know, or if he did them, he could bang all day and it didn't bother him at all. But if I did that, it's important that you find a spouse that can check you gently and ask, like, what's going on? What's happening there? Like, I noticed this, as opposed to, you know, you're such a blah, blah, blah because you blah, blah, blah. You know?
When I got divorced and I was able to finally analyze my life, I went back to my children and different things that I remembered, that my reactions that they didn't deserve, would acknowledge it, say it, you know, like, I remember I did this and it really hurt you. And I am so sorry. You didn't deserve that. That was healing, not only for me, but it was healing for them too.
Parents, and I love that, because very few parents do that. But I think what happens is the ego takes over and there's such shame and embarrassment. It's like, well, if they're not saying anything, I'm not going to say anything, because maybe they don't even remember.
Right.
But what the gift you're giving your child, like my mother apologized to me for something. And I was like, yes, I remember the incident, but Mom, really, you've been carrying that for 15 years. Like,
right.
Let it go. So sometimes but it helps her to be more aware that, oh, I did this and I didn't mean to do that. And it was like, well, I didn't take it that way, but yeah, you know, it just makes her a more conscious, better person. Dr. Shefali, The Awakened Family, I don't know if you've heard of her, but it really talks about the conscious family and the awakened family, and how our children are teachers to us. We think we're here to teach them.
Yep.
No, they're here to teach us about ourselves.
True. It's true.
And, you know, we teach them the basics of living, but, you know, and I have this conversation with women who are like, you know, yes, but I gave birth and it's my baby. And, you know, when they're going through divorce and all that. And I'm like, whoa. You gave birth, men give life. Men activate that egg. So men give life, women give birth. And it is an equal exchange. And it's and no one owns that baby. You're here as a guide. We're all going home. We're all going home together.
Yeah.
And our children are just someone that we get to bring into this world and walk with.
Thank you so much
Welcome.
for
Thank
sharing
you.
that. Yeah. All right, Jonathan. Jonathan's going to share his personal experience about religious legalism, devastating effect on relationships.
Good evening, guys. How's everyone doing? Listen, I think this is going to be a great forum. One of the reasons I decided to do this with CHAR is because I think sharing experience is vital to empowering others, learning from our experiences. The title closure, I was just looking at the definition, and it says the condition of being closed, closure of the eyelids, business closures, the closure of the factory, and often comforting or satisfying sense of finality, victims needing closure. Also something such as a satisfying ending that provides such a sense. See, the nice thing about this forum is it's, I believe, going to give individuals, especially folks that are in relationships, the tools that they need to be able to navigate successfully through relationships. I don't take personally CHAR's feelings of having wanted to divorce me and the idea of closure for her, because as mature adults, we all know that each person has a different viewpoint on what went wrong in the relationship. And at one point, before I get to briefly talk about the religious legalistic effect, I was kind of taking it personally that CHAR left the marriage. But when I look back at it, I realized that the word closure could have been tacked on the beginning of our marriage, because guess what? Two individuals, I call it the red, yellow, and orange effect. She brought in a red suitcase, never went through it. And I know a little bit about her background with her family. I brought into the relationship a yellow suitcase. We knew we had I knew I had a toothbrush in there and maybe some, something else, but didn't really know everything that was in my suitcase. When you put red and yellow together, what color do you get? Orange. So now you're married. You got CHAR's suitcase, you got mine, the red, the yellow, and now you got something known as the marriage or relational suitcase, orange. Now, how in the world are you going to be ready for orange with it when you didn't know what red and yellow were all about? Orange would be with the kids, the responsibilities that come with running a family and so on and so forth. It's important that individuals, especially men and women and men, are given the ability to articulate exactly what they are feeling, what they're thinking as it relates to their partner.
That's
because
right.
I don't agree with CHAR's decision to leave me. Now, she may have a 100% conviction that she was justified in leaving me. But one of the nice things about this forum is people should feel safe coming into this forum and disagreeing with Jonathan or disagreeing with CHAR, because with all of the panel and all the experts that are here, I think we have a world-class setup here. We can provide a forum second to none to help empower people and give them knowledge and information. I know as a 56-year-old man, I grew up, I started at Sears. I've been in the corporate arena for 40 years, working with people in management positions. And so when I look back at our relationship, I can see where I was inadequate, but I would never agree that CHAR should have left our marriage based on a few things. And this is just to throw it out, just as a precursor to what I'm going to say. Based on her previous life before she met me and her life after she met me. She'll never find anybody like J. Mac.
Well,
Ooh. Anyway.
really? Oh my gosh.
So that's just, and CHAR knows that she had the best. But that being said, we want people to feel comfortable. But I do respect you, CHAR, and the fact that what you went through in your life before me, and just as you said, the journey that you've been on, that you felt it necessary to move on. But that being said, I would say that religious, legalistic religious impact on our life, the legalism of growing up in what we called the apostolic doctrine, which there was a lot of good. We learned faith, we learned about the Bible, we learned about trusting in God and a lot of the religious elements to what is most important in life, because, and I'm going to wrap it up here shortly, life preemanates out of the spirit to the soul to the body. And relationships, I at least come from a background where I believe that there is a God that created everything. He's the God of the Bible, and that he actually created relationships. And if you look at it for what it was, he created a place called paradise. And I call it the first nudist colony, two naked people running around.
It actually was.
Are you with me on this? So he's certainly not a party pooper. All right, so, but to make a long story short, there were things that both CHAR and I grew up with. She was in an organization and I was in an organization that would get worked up about things like wearing pants or going to the movies and so on. So that certainly, and I don't have a lot of time to get into that now, but we'll talk about it later. But that certainly had an impact on our relationship. But I don't believe CHAR and I should be divorced. I don't believe many people should be divorced. I'll give you this one thing and then I'll turn it over. Sinbad, the comedian, he said that he and his wife were married for about 10 years. They divorced for 8. And then they came back. They've been together for about 11. He said, we found out we were too messed up for anybody else. We had to come back home. He said, I know you're crazy. I could deal with you're crazy, but I don't have time to train anybody else. I think it's important that as we come together and we dialogue, that every person's viewpoint is respected, man or woman. Even if a person is 100% off base, we need to work together to try to give them the tools so that they can learn how far off base they are. But let's try to teach, especially men. I can guarantee you this, men have a long ways to go when it comes to communicating and understanding women and vice versa. But men do need quite a bit of training in the area of relational connectivity. But I will say this, CHAR and I progressed, I think, and we became better educated from our religious background to where now we can both help empower other people when they come through similar upbringing.
Oh, okay. Thanks for sharing. All right, Suzanne.
Closure, that is such a general word. I would say there are degrees of closure in our lives. And I think the most powerful thing you can do with the ending of something is transform it and use, even if it's a bad relationship or experience, to take the energy from it and transmute it into learning. Because I think people are trained to think that we're here to be happy. I need to be happy. I need this, this, and this. We're here to learn, in my opinion, and grow as people. And unfortunately, if you are committed to that as yourself, and I don't want to sound selfish here, sometimes relationships don't work because you're not the person that you were at 27 when you get married to your high school sweetheart. I'm quoting my own. You grow and change, and sometimes you're still with that person, or maybe you have children with that person, but there's some closure, but you're always going to have, like Jonathan and CHAR, you're always going to have a relationship. You're not closed, you're still going. It's just a different thing, a different relationship, if that makes some sense. Mm-hmm. I love this book I read. I call it my Bible. It's called Women Who Run with the Wolves, and it's for men.
I have mine.
That's my Bible, and it's right here. Here's
I was about to get mine.
Woo, woo. Yeah, Sharon, I said you have to
turn me on to her. Yes.
Yeah, this woman, Clarissa Pinkola Estes, is probably one of the most badass. Oh my God. She is a Jungian psychologist. So she interprets myths, dreams, obviously. And she grew up, she was adopted by this kind of Eastern European family in, I think, Michigan. So she grew up literally where there's wolves in nature, and she connects all these things and women's wisdom. And I don't work with this yet. I'm thinking maybe somehow, someday I will do this. But I think if we are, as women, more in tune with who we are within the relationship and kind of allow ourselves this, I could get really heavy, but this dual nature, I think men would be better off, because I think women need to kind of empower themselves first and be whole. And then they can kind of instruct men how we really are. You know, we could get into the whole Madonna horror complex, which drives me personally insane. But back to closure, she talks about in the book, there's a time for things to die. It doesn't mean the relationship is supposed to die, but maybe aspects are supposed to die or, quote, have closure. So I think we have to all take on the work to slowly sift through our relationships, sift with our children. I like the trauma work that you guys were talking about. And I love the concept of kids. They come through you, but they're not yours. They're not yours. You teach them right and wrong. I like that I have 2 daughters in their 20s, early 20s. They're both polite, respectful, but they could not be more different. One has too many tattoos for my taste, but she's the coolest kid in the world. You know, they're not yours. They do come through you. And I like that analogy. But yeah, I just think there's constant endings and beginnings in life. And I believe that life is cyclical. It's not linear. And we're taught that in school, and I don't get religious, but we're taught that there's heaven and hell and there's this duality. But the book that I read, The Women Who Run with the Wolves, talks about there's life, there's death, and there's always new life after that. So I like to approach life that way. So it's yes, it's transformed. It's closure, yet it's transformed into something else. If that makes some sense. So
Yes.
Yeah, touching on many, many points. So closure is wow.
I know.
Difficult to define, but I'm really obsessed with the idea of transmuting energy and taking those quote, bad experiences and saying, okay, I didn't get this job I wanted. And then a year from now, you're in some other place and you look back and say, oh my gosh, if I'd taken that job or I'd gone this path, I wouldn't have what I have now. God always has something better for you, but you can't see it. You can't see it always. You know, so there's this sort of act of personal responsibility for your emotions, how you handle yourself in relationships. But there's also, in my view, this letting go. You know, and I wouldn't say I was raised really religiously, but I do think faith plays a huge part in it. You do have to let go a little bit and trust that everything's going to work out for your greater good. Because there's certain things you're not meant to know. You're just not meant to know.
Yeah. Awesome.
So I just don't think anything's black and white. Oh, it's done. It's closed. It's finished. This relationship.
Right.
And you and Jonathan are a perfect example. You have 2 beautiful daughters. 2 gorgeous daughters. Even my deceased husband. There's always going to be that connection, even in death. It's just a different relationship now.
Right.
Part of it is closed, but it's moved on to something else that it's continually morphing into. And I think the worst thing we can do is stand still. You have to keep moving, keep growing, even if it hurts. And unfortunately, even if it hurts other people, including yourself or family members, we have to keep going, keep going, keep going, in my opinion.
Noelle saying, yes, closure is letting go of the trapped emotions, not always the people. I like that. All right, good stuff. Thank you. Thanks. All right, Ezra Morris.
Hi, everyone. First of all, this is already such a healing experience for me personally. It's an honor to be here, to be among what I can already feel is such a wealth of knowledge and experience and wisdom. I'm getting the sense that people have lived their lessons and have integrated them. And I can sort of feel myself processing as I'm listening. But it's great to be here. When I think of closure, so many good things have been said already. But I will say that closure for me, I'm learning, is an ongoing experience. It's a decision that, it's a personal decision that I'm gonna adopt a position of acceptance. Like, this is what has happened, this is how I feel, and perhaps the way I feel is no longer acceptable, and I need something new to happen going forward. I guess the biggest, I guess I'll share a personal anecdote. The biggest way I've had to sort of like embody closure, I would say, is with family members. I was raised in a really, really traditional, strict, old school sort of religious upbringing. And Ezra came out a little bit different than that. And there was just so much conflict growing up, so much confusion surrounding that. And it got to the point where I realized that I was not okay. And there was such a disconnect between what I was being told and what I felt inside. And so I had to decide that I wanted to be okay. And I don't remember who said it, but I think it was Suzanne just now. That decision ultimately led to other people not being okay. A lot of people were not happy. I had to break ties with a lot of the philosophies and beliefs that were ingrained in me. And I honestly had to decide and understand that if I wanted to feel closure, it would have to be at that moment without like a verbal apology or an acknowledgement of pain or hurt from other people. Because if I waited for that, it would not have looked good for me. But what I will say, and this goes back to closure being an ongoing experience, I recently had a very beautiful experience where a family member that I decided to adopt that position of closure with, years later, benevolently, I guess I received an apology and a very open conversation, an acknowledgement of the hurt that took place. And yeah, closure.
That must have been so healing. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Wow.
And as I said, I get the sense that everyone is really, really experienced and has sort of, like I said, integrated their lessons. A lot of these things I feel like I'm still feeling. So I
Well,
feel
Ezra,
emotions.
you're what? What's your 29?
I'm 29.
So you're rather young with the rest of
yes.
us.
Of course.
So
And
we understand.
and I'm honored to be here amongst
We're
everyone in
honored to have
their
you.
training and their experience. It's a joy that you would invite me to be a part of this.
Yes.
Yeah, and as far as relationships go, that's a whole other thing that I have a long way to go with understanding, integrating, embodying. But yeah, just that theme of deciding that you need to adopt a position of closure, and that it might just be something that's personal. The other person, the other parties involved may follow suit, they may not, but what are you going to do to go forward in a way that is conducive to you living the best life you can live?
Yes, yes. So your views on sexuality and spirituality and developing boundaries is
Oh, Lord. Okay.
yes.
Yes. I'll try to be fast.
No, you're
Um,
fine.
yeah, sexuality. Every human, I feel, is entitled to their own personal experience with the creator, the universe, whatever your belief system is. I think that we need to allow people the room to just move through life freely. That is not the experience that I had growing up. I was from a young age, before I even had verbiage for anything related to intimacy or sexuality, I was told about who I was. And that was very detrimental for me. But over the years, I've learned that my experience is my own. My experience with the creator, with spirit, with universe, those experiences are my own. Those relationships are personal. And yeah, I guess that's a really broad way to say what I'm saying. We have to let people live and let live without just causing harm, honestly. Because trying to tell somebody about who they are is so detrimental. We spoke about trauma for just a little bit, and that particular form of trauma just causes such a deep level of a lack of trust within oneself, because you you're told literally that what you feel is not accurate. And so that translates into so many areas of life. And
Yeah.
I'm almost 30, young, I guess you could say, but there are just like bombshells that I'm going through about just how I've made decisions, how I have avoided making decisions in my life, and how all these things connect. So yeah, let people live. Let people live,
Yeah.
and boundaries. Oh gosh, I can speak a little bit on boundaries. I think it was Noel in the beginning who said that a lot of people are not going to like how you decide to uphold your boundaries. Yes, 1,000% I'm on the same page. And I'm just now learning what boundaries are, what they feel like, and how to uphold them, how to decide what they are for yourself. Um, I'm in the beginning stages of that. I've been a long time like professional people pleaser all my life. I'm just now beginning to understand that you making decisions for yourself, if you're a people pleaser, in the beginning, it's going to feel bad. You're going to feel like a bad person. You're going to feel like you're unkind, like you're selfish. And you're going to be, in my experience, I've been called selfish. I've been called like, it's been said like, well, don't you care about me? Like, how could you do this? And thank God for therapy. Thank God for the privilege of therapy and counseling. Those tactics like that are manipulative. And thank God for friends. I have a friend in here who joined.
Oh, nice.
A
Welcome.
friend of mine, a friend of mine had to call me out and say, no, that's manipulation. That person's a manipulator. And that's a hard pill to swallow. That's a hard pill to swallow, especially, like I said, when you're a people pleaser, you want to be nice to everyone. You expect everybody to be nice to you. You want to see the good in everybody. But like we said, a lot of things that were done to us in childhood, a lot of experiences that we had manifest as horrible behavior patterns, things that may not be intentional, but in effect might have really harmful effects.
Yes.
And so boundaries are important. Learning about boundaries is a process. I'm reading this book right now called Set Boundaries, Find Peace by Nedra Tawwab Glover. But it's a really, really straightforward guide to establishing, creating boundaries for yourself, walking you through the process of what that might feel like, of how uncomfortable it might be, and ultimately how to live a life that is conducive to feeling good and to growth. Because like Suzanne said, it's not all about being happy. It's about moving forward.
Right.
Yeah,
Thank you so
that's
much.
all I have.
Thank you so much for sharing. It's wonderful. Let's see. Tammy Snow says, I look at it like reading a book. You finish one chapter and go on to the next one. See what the next chapter has to say, finish it, and go on to the next. It's a means to getting to the end of the book. The finish the book to get to full totality of it. Finish the book, okay? Same in life. Close one chapter to open another, to experience the full totality of your life, not stuck in the same chapter. That's the key, not stuck in the same chapter. And sometimes moving from one chapter to the next, it's not easy, but we just got to keep moving. Thank you. All right. Mr. Will Howard. Yes, I can hear you. So share with us your thoughts on closure and also steps that you took. The reason why I asked him to talk about this because I had a wonderful conversation with him. And, especially for men, sometimes, the stubbornness and feeling like you don't need anybody's help or all that, but to actually do the work. And I was just so inspired. I was like, yeah, I got to hear more. So your steps in the steps you took for personal growth and self-development.
Well, as many other people say, and first of all, this is really inspiring because I've learned like the throwing sticks on the stage to watch me trip over them. Yeah, I started to holler like I was in church. Like, what? That, yeah. Sis.
Come on now.
Who said that? What's her name? I'm sorry. To know her
Noelle.
name.
Noelle.
All right, sis. I'm going to send you an offering. You know?
Yes.
Yes. No, because I've always felt that closure is a process, and that's something I had to learn. I'm divorced. I got divorced in 2013. We were married for 6.5 years. We were together for about almost 9. We have 2 children. I was my ex-wife's second husband. I didn't get married until I was actually sitting here trying to figure out how old I was. I was 36. And I remember when I got married, family members said, "Oh, I thought you were never going to get married because you were too picky." And it wasn't a matter of being picky. It was a matter of finding somebody that I thought I, had some kind of synergy with, and we were kind of wanting the same things. And I was caught up in ego. And I understand that now. But my ego told me that because I waited for a while and found this particular individual, that it was going to work out because it was supposed to. I guess I'm one of those people. I grew up in, I joke that I grew up Baptist, so we smoke and drink. So we had church was a part of our weekly thing that we did. My parents were trustees and deacons and mother, but it wasn't very strict. So a lot of the things that I did were not built into like some type of dogma, but there's a moral center. So part of my whole moral center as a Black person, as a Black man, is that once you take a wife, and I have an older daughter, but once you get married and you have children, you're supposed to stay there and stay in there. And that was my whole mindset. Because of the way that I had lived my life, I didn't really hear I didn't understand what my ex-wife had a problem with. Like, totally different. Totally didn't. I was like, what are you talking about? We have a house, we have cars, our bills are paid, we take 2 vacations a year, we're doing well. What's wrong? What I didn't understand at that time was that she had some internal things going on that had nothing to do with me. And I had some internal things that I couldn't understand why what I was doing wasn't working. So I get divorced in 2013. She wanted a divorce. I did not want a divorce mainly because of our children. But in hindsight, I was sacrificing a lot of my own happiness. I didn't feel like I deserved to be happy or a real man. That you gut it. You gut it out as a real man. Now, my mother was a handful, but I'm a second marriage baby, so that's why my siblings are much older. Okay. And my mother was a handful. And what I watched my dad kind of put up with my mother, and my mother put up with my dad, and they would have arguments, but they would resolve them because they had, my father was 54 when I was born. My mother was 46. Wow. Okay. They were older. They had figured out a bunch of stuff. So as this daily example, I thought, oh, well, you'll just figure it out. You don't have to do any work. I didn't realize that they had been working for years before I got there. But I was like, oh, you don't have to, it's just supposed to work and you'll figure it out. And then I'm trying to do things and we go to counseling and that's not working because everybody's not participating the way they should. And then it gets into, I remember we were at a counseling session and our counselor asked us individually, what is it that you are trying to do here? Because you're not doing any of the things I'm asking you to do. And that was when I kind of realized, oh, we don't want the same things. But I was embarrassed that I didn't want the same things as my wife, because that's my wife and you're just supposed to gut it out and you put your feelings to the side, you deal with the things because, the kids, the wife, the home, all of that was the most important. And so when we end up getting divorced, I remember the day I got divorced very specifically because the judges talking, and we had signed off on agreements, and there are lawyers, but it was on January the 2nd, 2013. So people were coming, back from holiday. They were coming back from New Year's, and they were all, oh, wow, I had a great time on New Year's and blah, 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 and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, my life is being torn apart, and you people are completely like, this is just another day.
Right.
And that freaked me out. And so the minute he was like, okay, it's done, you're divorced, bam, I just walked out the door. I left. And my lawyer's calling me like, where'd you go? And I was like, I can't deal with this. And I went through the next year, from 2013 to 2014, I was essentially in a daze because I couldn't reconcile what just happened. And I was embarrassed. I was hurt. Here's the guy who's always talking about Black children need to have parents and all this other stuff, and I can't hang it together. And that was embarrassing to me. And like hardly any of my friends actually, I kind of keep my personal thing. At that time, I really kept my personal thing very personal. So unless you were a very close friend of mine, you didn't know what was going on. And nobody knew I was divorced until I stopped wearing a ring. And over the years since, I've had to reconcile a lot of things about myself, but I had to deal with me. I can't blame her. She was doing what she thought was right for her to do.
Right.
Over the last year, it's funny because the pandemic allowed my ex-wife and I to actually have some really long conversations about some things that happened. And I started to understand how my place in the story that we were telling together, it wasn't what I thought. She was reacting to some things that I didn't understand, which I understand better.
Yeah.
And I think that you have to do that work on yourself. You have to, nobody can make you happy but you. You're the person who determines how much happiness you have. That's why you have people who have nothing, who are they have joy. So why is it that people who have joy, who have nothing, they don't have anywhere to live, they're in compromised situations, they wear the same clothes every day, they have nothing, but they're walking around, they're laughing and joking. Why is that? It's because they're happy with themselves. Somewhere inside of themselves, they found joy. You have to identify that and progress to it. Another thing is, as CHAR mentioned, we had a really great long conversation. And I shared with her a book that you guys might be familiar with, The Four Agreements. And agreement number 2, it's, I'm gonna paraphrase it. It says that nothing that anybody else thinks about you or says to you is really about you. It's all about how they actually see the world. And once you realize this, it changes your life. Now, I struggle with that because, I want people to like me. I wanted my ex-wife to like me, but she didn't, but what I started to realize was none of that had anything to do with me. And the only thing that it had to do with me was how I interpret other people's energy. So if I take other people's energy as facts, then I'm always going to be unhappy because everybody's not going to like you. Everybody's not going to react to you the way that you want to. And it's a matter of finding peace within yourself and moving toward that, understanding that once the deeper you get into that process, there are people who are not going to make it with you. And that's okay. That's okay because, it's all about seasons. Some seasons you might be with somebody for 20 years. Some seasons you might be with them for 3 months, but they're all valid. And it took a long time for me to understand that. So it's a process. And that's what I said, my minor is philosophy. And it's funny because as I get older and actually have experience in life to go along with theory, I start to understand how the application of all of that stuff works. So it's an ongoing process.
Yes.
Still going through it. And now I just want to be happy. And I try to live in the moment that I'm living in. A major thing that I've learned is that going over and over things in your mind and, oh, I should have did this and I should have said that, doesn't change anything.
Right.
And that's a big one. It doesn't change anything. We don't have time machines, or maybe we do and I don't know about it. But we don't have time machines to go back and change things. And if you had said or did or made this decision or that, it still might not have worked out your way. So I guess my portion of this is just to say, trust the process and understand that it's something that moves, whether you want to move or not. It's a river, so it's going to keep flowing. So
good stuff. Good stuff. Thank you so much. That was great. Somebody responses to what you're saying. Most men don't want the divorce. Anita says most men don't want a divorce, by the way. Noel says, I could talk for an entire hour on fatherless children. We need our men in the homes. Thanks, Will. All right. Anita, go ahead and share what closure means to you and your insights on allowing spiritual connections to heal the emotional wounds.
Well, let me tell you, I feel like a whole sponge. I'm listening to everyone talk, and it's been a whole honor just being in this space because I love hearing about everyone's ideas and experiences with life and their thoughts about closure and just where everyone is in the trajectory of their experiences and lessons, right? When I hear the word closure, it makes me like itch though. What's that dude, Tukey on Friday? Like it just triggers me. It just reminds me, I had a friend who she just had this expectation of closure, for a closure of a particular thing, and it just never really happened and became very, very, very unhealthy. So I always kind of identify closure as just this unhealthy expectation of something that we expect to be da-da, then when it happens, it's like this wonderful, beautiful elevation and and I really don't have a definition per se of closure. I really do believe in the importance of empowering oneself and not using our power to anything or any event or any person. So I think it's really important that as we walk through life, that we always make sure that we try our best to empower ourselves through our higher selves, which that can be, through religion, through our own spirituality, whatever that is, and for it to not to particularly be an event for something to happen. And so I guess if I look at closure, I would say closure would be self-empowerment and self-awareness.
Yes.
Thing, and the truth. Because what I'm seeing now, especially when it comes to the whole self-care movement, I'm seeing a lot of people doing a lot of self-care things with a lot of self-delusion.
Wow. Say that again.
Yeah.
You better preach.
You better. Look. Wow.
Like they're getting their pedicures and self-care Sundays and they're getting their manicures, but there's still a lot of truth that they're not willing to look at, and so they're going to their therapist but they're not really doing that work, not really, and when you really start talking to them about the work, they really don't want to do it because it requires accountability. It requires a change of behavior. It requires some really digging into their own responsibility with the work, with where they are, with their own peace. Mm-hmm. Are in our lives, like I forget who said it. The way our lives are is simply a mirror of how we view ourselves. Like the way my room looks right now is a hot mess. I can't blame anybody else. I can't blame that on my kids. I can't project that on anyone else. It's my fault. Like, I'm not going to live in that delusion.
Right.
It's
Right.
my fault. And that's the truth. And for real, that hurts to know, like, I need to figure out why my room is a mess. Like, I have an idea of why all of this is that there's a lot of self-care. Yeah, girl, I'm gonna have to get my CMOS and I have to pick this up and go to this seminar and do this and do that. But there's a lot of a lot of self-delusion. And so when I think of closure, there really can't be closure if you're not really dealing with your own self-delusion. And so when I think of closure, I kind of itch because I think of that moment of my friend who just could not get to the quote unquote closure because she was in this self-delusion of this lofty expectation that was never going to come. And the reality is, baby, you got to find your own self-awareness. You have to get your own self-empowerment, your own self-enlightenment. You got to get this, you got to conjure this thing up within yourself. You cannot outsource your power to anything, anyone, any organization. You have to get this thing within yourself. And I think what happens is that for whatever reason, I don't know what we've done to give our power to other things and other people. And in your song, you talk about like I can't love you because I'm broken. But you know what? We can love other things while we're broken. We do it all the time. We do it. And what's unfortunate is that we'll get so depleted because we'll be outsourcing from no resource. Like, what are we doing? And then we're like, but I'm tired, and then we get resentful to our kids, right? To our partners. The next thing you know, we're getting divorced. Like, I can't take it. I know for me, I ended up 100 pounds heavier. Oh my gosh, I don't even want to talk about the 10 pounds a year I ended up gaining. So it was horrible. I began getting depressed, horrible anxiety. My beautiful children came from that, but it was awful. I could not find myself. I'm like, where is she? Like, what is going on? She was totally lost. I had outsourced myself. I didn't know what was going on. I had lost everything about who I was. And it's so important that God had, I don't know who it was, God, higher self, broke me down to the bare bones to build me back up to who I was supposed to be again. And that's what has to happen a lot of times so that we can get our power back. And so that's what Suzanne was talking about. That transformation, when we think we're dying, you better die. We need winters. Winter better come. Nature shows us all the time the importance of seasons coming. Nature shows us summer, spring, fall. Here comes fall. We're dying. We better. Here comes winter. Everything's dead. Not really. Things are brewing. Things are brewing because spring is coming. It's so important. So, just about spiritual connections, right? And the importance of emotional wounds, that's really important that we understand our own selves for our emotional wounds to be able to heal. And I just have to keep going to the truth. We have to find out the truth about ourselves. And that's our own journey. No one can tell us that. That's something that we have to sojourn within ourselves with God, our higher selves, our angels, whatever we believe. We have to go through that journey within ourselves. Thankfully, I had a friend who told me, "Who are you? What happened to you? This isn't you. This wasn't the girl I knew in college who was bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, who wanted to know everything about everything. What happened to you? Where are you? Relationship does not have to be a death sentence. You don't have to die this way." And she was saying this relationship with self really had nothing to do with the marriage. It was a relationship with self. And for whatever reason, the relationship with self connected with this relationship with my husband. It really had nothing to do with the marriage, right? Because our relationship with self has everything to do with the projections, with the relationship with everything else. Our relationship with the world, our relationship with our husbands and wives, our relationship with our children, our relationship with our jobs. our relationship with social media, our relationship with IG, our relationship with Twitter, our relationship with ourselves has everything with our relationship with everything else. So that's what I would say. Our spiritual connection has everything to do with our relationship with ourselves and how we go through our healing our emotional wounds. And that goes with the trauma piece, which I always call trauma as fear benchmarks. That's what I call them. In your life when it was a fear tombstone for whatever reason, you got afraid in your body and your emotion and everything. It just created a tombstone. And you know, from that moment on, it's a benchmark there that you're always going to have to kind of work through for the rest of your life. And we all have them, you know. So thank you for allowing me to be here. That's my piece. I love you all.
Love you too.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Let's see, somebody responded to something you said. I use the example with clients that when a relationship breaks, it is like drinking fine wine from a broken glass. Wow. Sometimes it just can't be used anymore. And then I do have a program of self-discovery if anyone is interested. This is Noelle, so you can reach out. Can I ask, how many of you came from a pretty, I guess, secure upbringing, you know, from childhood, you know, like with father, mother?
Mine was pretty secure. Yeah.
Yours was pretty secure.
51 years
Yeah.
married.
Who's that? Will, you did?
Yeah, my parents were, my mother was my father's third wife, and my father was her second husband. But by the time I came along, they had stabilized. So I came along after the struggle.
Okay.
So
they kind of figured things out.
Yeah, they had, you know, I grew up in a nice house. I had stuff. My siblings, my mother was a single mother. So my siblings had it rough. Much rougher than I did. Me, I had like house and I could go to college and, you know, like whatever. If I needed something, I could get it. So I had that stability. My father was there.
Yeah.
And that's a big, you know.
Yeah, that's huge. Do you notice a difference? Do you notice a difference with how your life is versus with your older siblings?
They, you know, it was interesting because they're so much older than I am that it's sort of like having a bunch of uncles and aunties who are older than me. There's a 25-year difference between me and my next one. I'm a oops baby. You know, people tell me don't say that, but it's the truth. My mother used to tell women, you can have a baby when you're 40. But it's one of those situations where they had already figured out a bunch of stuff. And with my generation of kids, like my oldest brother and my sister-in-law have been married for 55 years. So they've been married longer than I've been alive.
50. Okay,
they've been married longer than I've been alive. My sister-in-law jokes about, I let you in the family. You know, so she's my sister. She's not my sister-in-law because there's never been a time when she hasn't been. And like my other brother, they've been married. I just thought about this the other day. They've been married 40, how am I 50?
I don't think I'm married to anybody.
48 years.
I think I have a 10-year max for marriage.
10 years?
See,
me too.
I'm serious.
At their 50th wedding anniversary, we had a celebration. We're all sitting at this table, and I noticed that I was sitting with my niece and my nephew and a couple of relatives, and we were all divorced. We were sitting at this table, and we were like, "Is this the divorce table?" Like,
welcome.
But then we added up our marriages, and it did not add up to how long they have been married.
Wow.
So, you know, and I asked my brother all the time, you know, I asked him advice, like, how? And he says, he said, well, how do you deal with all, and not that I have a lot of different women, but he said, but how do you deal with all those different women? And I was like, I don't know, but it was like you said, 10 years. I mean, and in my mind, we could have, as a couple, when my ex-wife and I are in the right mode, we're great together. Like stuff with the kids, like we're both dedicated co-parents, and we agree mostly on stuff with them about what a priority is, and we can move. It moves quick. We can do stuff. We bounce off each other. I can anticipate what she wants. She can anticipate what I want. That would be great. And so we're good at that. Mm-hmm. And they're 12 and 13. So, it's that part's good. But the other part, but that's the season that we're in. We're raising these children.
Would you turn your light on?
Yeah, I was about to say, I'm going to turn the light on.
Turn on the light.
Right? We can't
light a candle.
Say, girl. Who's that?
If I can answer your question really quick, I was born Jennifer Noel, and my name was changed to Noel Jennifer when I was 1 year old, which is right when a child starts to learn their identity from their mother, and that, oh, Jennifer, you mean me? And now everyone's calling me Noel. So I had a little identity crisis at 1.
Oh, wow.
My mom did have postpartum depression, so I was separated from her when I was an infant for a couple of almost a month. My father left for 6 months when I was 6 months old. So I had abandonment from both parents before age 1, and my name changed. And by age 5, I had been sexually molested, neglected, beaten daily by my sister, who was my bully. And, so by age 5, I had experienced it all.
Oh my God.
And I was born to do this. It was divine. So, and I just wanted to say too, my son, he went from age 12 to 18 without his dad in his life, not by his choice, and not by my choice. And just Sunday, I celebrated his dad's birthday with him and my son and his wife and his half brother. And to me, that's closure. It was a new beginning of a new relationship. And we're closing out the chapter of who did what back then, because what's happening right now is a new beginning. So that closure sometimes is not always the end of a relationship. It's the end of the past is in the past. And right now is right where we're starting. And if we're going to keep going to the past, then I have to close the entire book.
Right
but
there.
Let's just keep the chapters going, because I would rather be my ex-husband's friend than his enemy, or not at all.
Exactly.
Right. I have to say that, okay, so we only have 30 minutes and I had so much other stuff to talk about. We might have to discuss. I know, we might have to discuss maybe having part 2.
I'm just getting started.
I know. But
can I say one thing real quick?
Yeah, sure.
To Ezra, I admire you, and you're 29 and you're figuring stuff out.
Yeah,
bro.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bro, come on.
I'm proud of you. I don't even know you.
Come on. Come on.
I remember
some of the stuff you said. Man.
Hi, Suzanne.
Keep it going, man.
Yes.
Keep it going, man.
Thank you very much.
That's revelation. Trust me.
Yeah.
You're dealing with revelations that people 20 and 30, they never figure it out.
Right.
You're figuring
40
and
50. 40 and 50.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I'm proud of you. I just wanted to say that real quick. Okay, I'll shut
up. Yes. No, that's good. No, and he's even holding back. He's holding back. He has, I love to hear him talk. I love to hear him talk. So when I got married, like John and I were married for 23 years. 23.
And how old were you?
I was 19.
19.
I was 19.
The baby.
And I was the baby. And when I got married, it was really running away from home. John had become like a best friend to me. There was a lot of, abuse, mental, emotional, physical abuse at home. And I needed an escape. And found this gorgeous looking man. Wasn't with him for his looks, but I found a friend. But there were so many pieces to my life that I didn't know. There were so many things I wasn't aware of. And do you not know that it's just last year is when I found out the truth about my life. Last year, 2020. So can you imagine living with a man who, like Will was talking about, there was other issues going on with his wife he wasn't aware of. I didn't know how to vocalize what was going on. I didn't know why I felt so disconnected. So if my husband said something to me that hurt me, I didn't know I could open my mouth and vocalize saying, hey, that really hurt me. Why'd you say that? Instead, I stuffed, those things. I felt like I was unlovable and I should just live a life where I don't feel like I'm loved. And then depression, I struggled with depression so much to where I felt like I was going to die. And I couldn't blame anybody per se. I even went to counseling and didn't know what I was going to counseling for because I didn't have the answers. I didn't know my identity. Come to find out that I just found out that the man who I thought was my father wasn't my father.
Oh, wow.
Jeez.
So it's
wow.
like there's stories like my mom, she wasn't able to love me because of who this man was. And I was just thinking about her story. So the reason why I wanted to do all this is because digging deep and going back to the root, we cannot heal on the surface. Real healing does not come from the surface stuff. So that's why I asked who grew up with that, safety net as that family and those who didn't. And I realized that we're all still struggling.
I think most don't have a safety net. There's always something, I think.
Can I
just
just
look picture perfect? There's always some trauma, and there's always, I think our generation, I didn't mean to interrupt if I did. Sorry.
It's okay. No, you're good.
No, I think I'm trying to remember where I read this or saw this, but 10% of people don't have trauma. It's how you deal with it. I think
Right.
And I think, we kind of skirt around religion a little bit. I think that can be a community, but I think it is a solo journey. Who was just saying that? It is a solo journey. We are by ourselves. We have to do the work. There is meaning to suffering, as they say. But yeah, most people did grow up with some, and I'm not negating it or saying, get over it. Everybody grows up with it, but it's boy, if we all grow up with it, why don't we support each other more?
That's right. Exactly.
Relationships, and just even, I don't want to say joke about it, but have, this is a trigger, or this is really get to know, like Jonathan's analogy with the suitcases. I like that. Ours got red and I had yellow and made orange. I thought that was a really cool, easy way to understand, or like a visual way to stand on that. And everybody has trauma. I think everybody does.
Exactly.
And maybe the ones that don't are like bodhisattvas. They come to help us. They're already enlightened and they're here among the human beings. It's just navigating through it. And it's a beautiful struggle. And I'm repeating myself, but it's not supposed to be this magical, perfect. There is beauty in struggle, and that's where things grow, the dark, the dirt, so.
I was just going to say that, Suzanne, you're right. When you mentioned the emotional wounds, CHAR, those emotional wounds those are a part of the lessons that we're here for.
Yeah.
There was some poem I read, it said that, us being here, it's about the sloppy love. It's about the messy love. It's not really about the beautiful. I don't really believe in unconditional love either, not here, but it's about where we come. It's about the remembering where we come from, but it's about learning about those messy places. That's what Earth is about.
Yeah.
It's about us learning about that, but also remembering, where we come from, but learning those experiences of what this feels like. Because that's what this space is, this 3D space is about, feeling all of that, feeling the fear, right? And learning to navigate through it and learning to get higher through feeling all that and learning the grief and learning even how to come together in community with that, even as journeying through it alone in some spaces, because I do believe that there are people who are called in our lifetimes to walk with us through that. This is what Earth is about. Earth is about learning lessons and walking through them. But it can be hard sometimes. But we have one else, or we wouldn't be here. Right?
Yeah.
But I think with the exception of Ezra, we're all a little bit older. I think the average age is probably 50-ish.
Yes.
40s, 50s.
Yeah.
And I think that when you get a little bit older, and it's a whole other subject, now we're getting into that, I want somebody to grow old with. And I hate that when people say that.
Right.
Because I'm like, so, okay, now all of a sudden you're just going to compromise just to have somebody.
Yeah.
And it doesn't
Right.
really work like that.
Take care of me.
I say God. God taught me how to love.
Yes.
God taught me what real love is. And that's why I'm at the place now where I can love myself and I know my worth.
Yes.
A lot of times we want to blame our pain on our relationship,
Right.
but it's not the relationship. It's our own personal stuff. And until we can get to that root and know why we do what we do, why we feel what we feel personally, not on anybody else, that's the only way that we're going to heal. That is the only way.
Family of 10, my mom and dad. My dad grew up in a family of 12 where my grandmother raised 12 children by herself. There was sexual abuse, there was incest, there was rape. My uncle Joseph committed suicide. He was a gay gentleman, and on and on and on. But I think what happens is, and we talk about unconditional love, I'm a big proponent of unconditional love in this sense, that, as you said, it's about you understanding that you're mature enough to be the executive in the room, to be able to treat someone with respect, not necessarily live in an abusive situation. And I don't believe I abused CHAR. I don't believe I was abusive in my relationship. However, I do believe there were lifestyle habits and knowledge and things that I had acquired that didn't allow me to be as sensitive to where she was in her life. And as she said, she didn't even know what was in her suitcase, that she was dealing with issues with her mom and dad, not even realizing that she didn't know who her real father was. And so there was no way in the world that I could really connect with CHAR because she wasn't connected with herself.
Absolutely.
And vice versa. My point is simple though. The unconditional love aspect is when the adults get together and the architects get together and the troubleshooters and the problem solvers get together, the bigger picture is always bigger than any individual. It's about the unity of knowledge and wisdom and awakening and understanding that our goal isn't to victim or isn't to make villainize the mom, the dad. My mother was abused. They have gone through hell. And so I think my final point is that journey of closure involves going back to the beginning and fixing and understanding what went wrong from the beginning, understanding that, and then integrating it back into the cumulative effect of the whole, so that we can do what? Empower one another. And that means sometimes the child has to lead the parent to healing. There are people in our lives that will never be healed until we unconditionally put our own hurt, our own ego, our own pride and story to the side for the greater good of the whole. And there's a lot of examples of that. I can't get into it right now, but really what happens is sometimes certain individuals, certain generations, they can't close the gap. They can't finish the story. It's going to take you, CHAR, me, somebody else to say, you know what, Mom, I understand. I get it. And then the story begins. That's when closure takes on a whole different.
It's funny that
dynamic.
you say that. It's funny you say that because actually last year, I actually said to my mom, when I finally found out the truth, I had a video conference call with her. And I told her, I get it. I know it. She didn't even tell me anything, you know, like I had to figure out all these pieces, put them all together. And I told her, I get it. I'm so proud of you that you were able to pick yourself up and move through life and raise these 3 kids. I praised her. My mother's response was, Charmaine, I'm not your project. So when you have responses like that, it takes 2, reconciliation.
No.
What am I supposed to do?
Absolutely.
Protect
And
yourself.
all I can say is it is what it is.
Yep.
She's not
It
here.
is what it is.
You have to just accept like that is the best she can do.
Right.
Yep.
As a mother,
I'm at peace. Yes.
yeah,
And you're the
as
daughter and she's the mother. There it is again.
a mother for yourself, you can look at it and say, wow, admire your own parenting at that point. Because you would never do that to your baby girls.
You know, and thank God for the truth, like this truth that has come out that has been hidden for so long.
That's
closure of this truth that's come out that
he
has tried to hide.
And that's your closure.
Think about the strain of that. Think about the strain of that to maintain that lie.
That's what I said.
Lifetime without the emotional, without the ability to have that kind of emotional range to talk to your child. Because generationally, they didn't talk to us like that.
And the karma that comes with that.
You broke
the karma that comes.
Closure. You broke the chain.
I broke the chain, baby. That's what it's all about. That's what I'm doing. That's what I'm doing.
Maybe that's your soul contract partly, is to break that millennial, heal the ancestral wounds, you know?
I feel that, and you know what I love? That I love my mom so much. I taught my children to love her so much. And so even though I don't have a relationship with her right now, they love her to pieces. They will make time to go see it. So she's still getting the essence of it.
Let me say this about CHAR as well, because she was a lot more on that journey of being in touch with kind of that universe around her as it relates to loving and respecting and being connected because of the pain I think that she experienced. So I came from an environment where there was, I guess you could call it a domineering mother, beautiful mom, but bam, kind of an ineffectual father. He didn't want any kids. My mother wanted 12. They called him Tango Fox. He didn't want kids at all, 0. My mother took him to the pastor and said, he needs to give me some kids. I want 12 kids. And guess what? He had 12 in his family. And guess what? It was a bad deal. But let me just say this about CHAR. I've seen her journey. I do believe that I was not as sensitive at times to what she was going through because, number one, I didn't know what she was going through. I do have a story of treating her with great love and respect. When I met her, romance and the whole 9. After we got married, we were both very much involved in the church, which devastated our family connectivity. My father was a pastor. My mother was a pastor's wife. I was involved with their ministry, as was CHAR. So that's another story for another day. But to CHAR's credit, I will say this. She has sown love into everybody. I mean, her mother, her sister, and to me, she served me. I served her. She served the girls. None of us are perfect. We don't have the perfect story. We don't have the perfect agenda. We're all learning on the fly. But CHAR, you definitely have sown into your mom love for us to take some time and get into the shoes of our mothers and of our fathers. See, I lost my mom. She died of cancer at 67. You will never experience what it's like to lose a mother, even if you've had a bad relationship with her. I've watched your mom, CHAR, and I'll say this in close. I believe she's well-intentioned, but much like my mother, when we would say, well, Mom, let's talk about it. My mother would say, no, let's not talk about it. It's under the blood. Jesus has covered it. Don't worry about it. And she would literally, you could see her tense up to the point of hysteria, because you can see, as it Lynn that I'm looking at now, it says it brings out it triggers those feelings like, oh my God, we can't go down that path again. I've been through that and I don't want to talk about it.
My concern is I want this to be as authentic as possible. I want it to be as thorough as possible. I don't want us to breeze over anything. I want it to be what it's supposed to be. And that's healing and healing together, you know? Go ahead. Well, what were you saying?
No, I was thinking about something Jonathan said, because he's 56, so we're the same generation. Me and my buddies who are all about the same age, like early to mid 50s, we joke about, we didn't know we were supposed to have feelings until 2002. It's like 2002 is like, hey, you're supposed to have feelings. What?
What is that? Exactly. Okay, so funny that you're saying that, because we were supposed to go into our subtopics, which is love, sex, divorce, and breakups. But I think that's going to be very deep. So let's push that for the second part, for part 2.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So this was great, everybody. Thank you so much. And special shout out Albert Jones. Let them see you. Where are you, sister?
Hi, Char, I'm here.
Hi. Okay. I want to say in front of everybody, she jumped in at the last minute because I was a spaz. I was just freaking out. She does this all the time. I'm a part of a open mic on Friday nights with Lynn, and the Good Hearts, is that the Good Hearts Club open mic? Yep. And it brought me through the pandemic, through a very rough time of the pandemic. And you know, just, you all know me singing, it's life. You know how most of you are musicians, so you know what that means. And Lynn has provided a platform for us to be able to come and to share with each other. But I was panicking so much, and she offered her help at the last minute. And I just want to say thank you, everybody. Just give her a hand, because she made it possible for us to be able to share. I love you so much. Thank you. I appreciate it.
I love you too, honey. This was fantastic. Fantastic.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Thank you for those in the chat. Hopefully we can bring more people in for the discussion, because it's going to get deep. Everybody feeling good?
Yeah.
Yes, nice. Let's see. So this is episode 1.
In the can.
Yes, this was great. This was great. Okay, everybody. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Char.
Sending you love. I'll be in touch. We'll plan for the next one, and we'll move.
Good job, Char. Good job.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.
Nice to meet everybody too.
Bye.
All right.
My pleasure, guys.
Bye-bye. And thanks to those who attended. I didn't get to acknowledge everybody, but thank you. Okay. All right. Bye-bye. Love you, Lynn. I'll talk to you, honey.